Hello, everybody. Welcome to another exciting season of 2 Week Too Strong. My name is Rashid Khan, and I am so very happy to see so many of you joining us again, and especially on a Saturday. Really shows your commitment to learning and growing in your careers. This season of 2 Week Too Strong is special in many ways. First of all, unlike last season, which was our season 1, we are not doing a marathon of back to back sessions because this time around, as the tagline suggests, we are delivering a million seconds of world class learning. So, after every session, the trainer will leave you with a lot of homework. So, you don't just spend 1 hour learning a topic, but spend a lot more on brushing your skills, doing some homework, and always know what you need to do next in order to really master a skill. Second special thing about this season is that we are focusing on the 5 emerging career zones of opportunity as we identified them in our research called Future of Accountancy Careers in 2020s. So if you attend all the live webinars of this season, you will be able to earn a very prestigious certificate of Future Ready Business Professional or FBP. Isn't it amazing? It is. And thirdly, all the trainers we have for this season are truly world class, offering you an unparalleled learning experience. So get yourself fully ready for this exciting, transformative journey. And very important announcement for those who have not renewed their subscription. Please make sure all your payments and contact information is up to date so you continue to receive all the great support this year. And we have really exciting initiatives planned for the whole year. So say yes to another exciting year with ACCA and renew today. We are so lucky that today we are joined by such an amazing ACCA member as a trainer. He's a very busy professional. You speak to him one day, he's in a different time zone. The next day you call him, you'll find him in another time zone. Highly in demand, ACCA professional in both East and West Coasts, joining us all the way from the United States of America. Very early in the morning. It's still dark, as you can see in the window. Ladies and gentlemen, Dave Ramnarayan, FCCA. And before I hand over, a little intro. Dave holds titles including Audit Partner, CPA by Choice, Executive Vice President at National Association of Black Accountants, co-founder at Threadheim LLC, and strategic partner at the XP Group. He's also a keynote speaker, author, musician, member of ACCA's Technology Global Forum, and a global ACCA advocate. Dave has a singular dream to create a world that works for everyone and everywhere. All his endeavors in life are dedicated to fulfilling on his accountability by empowering, inspiring, and leaving others with clarity at all levels of self, others, and the world. So without further ado, introducing Mr. Dave Ramnarayan, FCCA. Hello, Dave. Good morning.
Hi, Rashid. Good morning. Great to be here.
Thank you so much for doing this. Really appreciate it. Now I'll do all the listening and you do the talking, please.
Thank you very much. Well, first of all, I want to say thank you to everyone for having me with you today on this journey of learning and development. And I want to say a special thank you to Rashid and the ACCA team for doing all of the hard work in putting together not just this webinar, but the entire series with an end game of making sure that as members, we keep developing ourselves and being at the forefront of the profession. So thank you very much. And thank you for the introduction. One of the things that I want to say here is that, at a personal level, I am really committed to living a life where I get to fulfill on all of the various things that I'm passionate about, which is why I do all that I do inside of, fulfilling my dream in inspiring, empowering, and leaving myself and others with clarity. And I know that globally, we're still dealing with the impacts of COVID-19 and the way that it has shaped and changed a lot of what we've been doing. And this conversation that we're having and these series of conversation that has been put together by the ACCA Pakistan team is very, very relevant now, because I think that one of the things that came out or as a result of COVID is that it has given us the right ingredients for innovation, the right ingredients to rethink why we do what we do, or why we do have been doing it in a particular way, and cause us to start activating our brains to start thinking about things in different ways that could be more efficient and effective. And just a little bit more about me. I'm originally from the Caribbean, Trinidad and Tobago. Um, and I grew up there. And I grew up on a farm, and seeing all of the things that were done very manually on my parents' farm. As I grew up and became a teenager, I always was looking for ways that would have had my parents' jobs become easier. Had my dad been on the farm working so hard, what can be done to make things easier? And whilst I didn't go out and create a piece of technology that revolutionized agriculture, what that has done, that desire to see things done differently and more efficiently, it has put me on a path, throughout my professional career, PwC and other organizations, to start engaging with new ways of doing things. So when new technologies like blockchain and machine learning, I was very curious to see not just like the hype about it, but what can the technology provide. And I've dedicated a big part of my time over the last few years in educating accountants around the world how to engage with various pieces of technology. And with that said, today we're going to engage in a specific conversation, um, and what we're going to look at is, I will kind of highlight a couple of technology. I'm not going to bug you down with, well, what is blockchain or what is machine learning or any of those kinds of conversation, because I know that we've sort of been overloaded with a lot about digital, 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 right? So it's been like a mantra over the last 12 months, 24 months. However, what I want to actually address, I will give you some highlights, but then how do we actually go about having the conversations that we need to have in order to have adoption occur in our businesses, or in order for you to innovate and create some entrepreneurial endeavor? And I will highlight a couple of projects around the world that is blockchain related or blockchain with other pieces of technology. Um, and by no way I am endorsing these companies. I am just using them as example of things that you can in fact see, and interact with, do some Google research and kind of see what solutions they are, that's out there. Now, the other part is that I have some recommended reading that I would kind of talk a little bit about at the end of our webinar, that I strongly advise that you follow through on when we are at the end of this webinar. So, like I mentioned, the tides are turning, and COVID is kind of nudging us in that direction. And the other thing is that there are a number of emerging technologies that we're hearing about, and we're a lot of time accountants are now faced with, well, which one do we use? And why that particular technology? So we're kind of getting to some of that discussion. And there's also been, over the last year, because of the buzz and hype around digital agenda and digital strategies, um, you know, ACCA has put out a number of professional insight reports to help and really empower accountants to be more grounded in the conversations around technology. Now, what's also happened, stepping outside of that, in the in the world where people are actually investing and creating proofs of concepts using blockchain and other technology and machine learning, there's an element of what is called FOMO, right? The fear of missing out. And what I've seen is that some companies dive into the blockchain bandwagon, for example, and spend a lot of money and resources, not properly thinking out why they're engaging with the technology, and they end up wasting valuable resources, spending in some cases hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars in research or developing something that did not prove to be give a return on that particular investment. So this is something that we have to be watchful of, especially companies that may have the resources. Whether you have the resources or have limited resources, you want to be careful with how you engage the technology, because you could end up, tying up resources that could be used elsewhere in the organization. Now, like I said, I'll just kind of highlight these technology very quickly. Blockchain, it has several qualities that make it disruptive to our profession. It is near instantaneous, immutable, and continually updating form of ledger that is also, um, you know, immutable, continuously updating, and it's also programmable to automate manual and labor-intensive business processes. Now, blockchain by itself may not really add significant value to businesses. And what I've seen is when you take blockchain and combine it with other technologies, like, for example, your IoT or other types of, some data analytics or machine learning, is where real value come in. Now, we've been hearing a lot about data analytics, and we could say a whole lot about data analytics here. The way it has evolved in the last couple of years, it's phenomenal, and where we see new types of reports coming in, integrated reports coming in, better connection is being made between different data points, and really providing information to management for better decision making. And then, we have robotics. We see a whole lot of experimentation going on in this field. I was at one of the basketball games about a year and a half ago, almost 2 years, and they had a robot that was, just sort of walking around the arena, and it was being used to scan individuals for detecting any type of dangerous weapons or stuff like that. And recently, they've been experimenting with one that would detect extreme body conditions like body temperature and whatnot, to be able to alert in crowds where COVID-19 prevention is concerned. Then AI, which is a very broad field as well. One of the things that is included here is machine learning, and this is very something that sounds very foreign, but it's very close to home. If it is, you have on your phone, you have Google Translate. That is machine learning. If it is, you work in a company where revenue management is and prices to customers is based on this philosophy called dynamic pricing, then that is inside of the realm of machine learning. So, for example, in the US, I know that some airline companies, they use dynamic pricing. So depending on where you are, your shopping habits, you might get a different price on a ticket than someone else may get searching for that same itinerary. So, we already use a number of elements in machine learning. And what I like to do is to ground these conversations in reality so that we don't think of it as something that's far reaching. Machine learning is already here. We're already interacting with it. We're already using it. In some areas, you could get like a virtual personal assistant. That is, machine learning as well. And the whole idea here is that the algorithm is done in such a way that it learns and develops over time based on habits and interactions. Um, so, this is something that would become very, very important, not just for the accounting aspect of the profession, but where this would now revolutionize the way business is done going forward. And then we have IoT, Internet of Things. And if you have an Apple Watch or one of those digital watch, that is an Internet of Things, right? When I say Internet of Things, uh, simply put, one piece of technology communicating to the other, right? That's typically what an IoT is. And when you have a watch, it can communicate with your phone. When you have a phone, it might communicate with your home device, like your HomePod or Alexa. All these are elements of Internet of Things that we use on an ongoing basis. In a practical sense, one of the use cases that I've seen is blockchain using IoT to gather information that communicates to the blockchain. And what the example for that is in cold chain logistics. So one of the projects that was done, the proof of concept was to um, be able to not have farmers bear most of the loss for produce that get to the supplier, and it's not good. Sorry, the customer or the distributor. So by the time it gets to the distributor, sometimes the produce aren't good, the lettuce or whatever is being transported, and usually they blame the farmers. Now, what happened is that they built in these IoT devices. So when the produce is loaded onto the truck, a picture is taken automatically and uploaded to the blockchain. And we know that's immutable, so nobody could doctor that particular photograph. And then along the way, another IoT device monitors temperature. So if temperature goes, up a certain amount and it gets really hot, then it means that the product, after being under that condition, can't be sold in the supermarket. So what that does is that the moment that the temperature starts going outside of the allowed range, then they either trigger a notification to let the driver know and maybe stop and try to address it, or if it is they can't do that because they've sealed the particular container being transported, then notification would go out to the insurance company, it would go out to the customer, it would go out to the supplier, so everyone know at what point did that particular product go bad and whose fault it is, right? So ideas like that are revolutionary and create so much value for participants along the supply chain. And then smart contracts. I had given ACCA a lot of feedback about smart contract and had contributed to an article that was published July last year. I would advise everyone to read that article, and that article was focused on the future kinds of position that accountants will possibly have available. And I talked about smart contract auditors, smart contract accountants, and what a smart contract is quickly is it's simply a piece of code that gives instructions. So if you're familiar with Excel, you could put a formula in Excel that says if this then that, right? It's the same thing. So it's a piece of code that's built with if then statements. To put it simple, there's a lot more to it, but like that's explained simply. Um, and then it could execute tasks. Now in application, think about routine tasks that we do as accountant. We calculate taxes. We do, provisions calculation for obsolescence or for bad debt or bad debt allowance, right? All of these things you could build code in or create a smart contract with instructions to execute at certain points in time. So this is an area where I see as accountants, we could actually lead a big part of this transformation, where we could engage with smart contracts and find solutions to help revolutionize the way we do month-end close and other routine accounting activities. Now, I did say that I will mention a few projects that I've seen around the world that makes a lot of sense for us to pay attention to because it's revolutionizing the way business is done. So, in Cyprus, this hospital created an app where they were able to track, your COVID test, for example, via an app that was built on or communicated with blockchain. They're repurposing the same thing now to be able to provide your vaccination certificates and vaccination information, so that when you travel around, it's like your vaccine passport basically, that would be accepted across various European countries and eventually around the world. In the US here, when you get your vaccine, you might have seen people posting on social media, but all you get is a little card, which was like back when I got immunization as a kid. You had your little immunization card. So in the US here, we've kind of gone to that paper mode instead of using technology. But I do see that very quickly using technology to be able to track vaccination will be something that will become, the norm rather than the exception. So VChain is a blockchain company, and they're an enterprise-focused blockchain. And I particularly like them because of the governance surrounding their blockchain and how it's been developed and focused with enterprises in mind, addressing some key components that I've been a big advocate for, which is proper governance. And when you have companies that have anti-money laundering policies, they don't get involved with terrorist financing and all of that stuff, and they have policies and procedures in place to guard against those. When you deal with a completely open blockchain, like, for example, Ethereum or the Bitcoin blockchain, you don't know who the writers to the chain are. So inadvertently, you can be having your information written to the blockchain by someone who's probably a terrorist financer or involved in money laundering, and then by extension violating your company's policies and procedures around those things. So I say that to say that in the blockchain world, we aren't at a place that we have all the answers yet. It's still growing and developing. As fast as enterprise concerns come up, we're creating or trying to build out solution that addresses the concerns. And then in Luxembourg, we have music rights being tracked and put onto the blockchain. Settlement, which is focused on, just like you have settlement companies for credit card transactions and other type of financial transactions. It's the same type of thing that they're doing, except in that it's backed on blockchain. So there are numerous types of example. In Jamaica, I just remember this one. In Jamaica, there's an agriculture company that's working towards building credit profile for farmers based on how they spend with vendors. And to give you some background here, farmers did not really have access to traditional financing and bank because they may not have a credit card, they may not have a credit history that the bank would recognize. So what they did was to create solutions that would allow farmers' behaviors, like you go and you buy fertilizer, okay, on credit from that vendor, and you pay on time. That speaks to your credit worthiness. So what they're doing is gathering that information, and it's layered on the blockchain, and using that to determine farmers' credit worthiness so that they have access to financing or working capital finance to help them with their crops. So there is quite a lot going on in the blockchain space, but not just blockchain. All of these solutions that I'm pointing to is taking blockchain and another piece of technology, whether it's IoT or machine learning or something else, to really create these solutions. Now, how do we go about having these conversations, having conversations for application? And a big part of it, I always say, is embedded in communication and how we communicate, how we listen, and to really understand the problems that we're trying to solve, or the issues we're trying to solve, or the area of the business we're trying to or working towards transforming. Now, when I speak about that, you know, we already have a preconceived notion about how we communicate and how people would respond, right? So, um, it's like you already know that the company, oh, they don't spend money, so I'm not going to talk to my boss about that. Oh, we're doing a cost cutting exercise, or my boss is not, he's not a younger person, so therefore he wouldn't really be open to technology. So we already have a lot of noise in the way that we communicate about technology or about, solutions that we want to bring to the table. Sometimes it might sound like, well, I'm too junior to go and bring up this conversation with my boss, right? So what I want to point out here is that the context that gets in the way of us being able to take the conversation of application forward and really being the ones driving the change, right? Now, I'm just gonna go a little bit into um, a model that I created called the Wheel of Workability, and touch a few items in there that I think it's important for me to bring up as you prepare yourself to have conversations in and around the technology space. So, like I said, the wheel of workability, I'm not going to get into this. I've done a number of webinars in different ACCM markets around this model for leadership, performance, and really empowering change. So I'm not going to go into each of these here. I'm going to dive into a couple elements here, and we'll build on that. So the first element is communication, and I'm not referring to good public speaking here only. I'm talking about being in communication. Don't avoid being in communication. So if it is that you have an idea about what could make a difference or how you could bring a solution or create a conversation about technology, don't avoid it, do it. Now, the context behind things normally stop us. So if you could see me on the screen, if I put this up, and I've given this example many times because I think it's very powerful, right? This, in the context of anatomy, is a finger. In the context of numbers, it is one. In the context of direction, it is up. Now, this didn't change. All that changed was the context through which we interacted with this. In the context of anatomy, it's decisive that this is a finger. In the context of numbers, it's decisive that this is one. In the context of direction, it's decisive that this is up. Now, why I share that is that in your work environment, the situation may not change. The way that your boss think about something might not change. But where we have the power to actually go and bring forward these changes is to shift the context through which we interact with it. Like we just did with this, in 3 seconds, we had 3 different contexts and they were all valid: finger, number, direction, right? So that's one of the things that I always like to leave people with. Hey, look at the context that you're coming from when you're going to have these particular conversations. And the other thing I'm pointing out quickly is acknowledgement, right? Not just like talking about gratitude, but being able to acknowledge the truth of something or the truth of the way things are. So this takes being grounded in what works and what does not work about the particular area of your business or the particular thing that you're trying to create a solution around. And then obviously acknowledgement also extend into, be gratitude and also really motivating people to bring their best selves to work. The other thing I'm going to point out for my model is an element called play. And the one thing that I'm going to focus on here is about ambiguity. The quality of being open to more suggestions and solutions, being open to having those conversations. So you might come up with an idea, but it's being able to engage with others and having that idea really get thrown around until a solution presents itself that really works for the particular problem that you're trying to solve. Now, what gets in the way of us being able to do that? Concerns and attachment. That's the 2 things. Being concerned about, is it, am I going to be am I going to have all the knowledge I need to talk about blockchain? Well, newsflash, you don't need to be an expert at blockchain. You need to understand what it can do, but you don't need to know how it's built. You don't need to know the technical stuff. We could leave that for the technology expert. Can I build a blockchain by myself? No, but I do know someone who can. So I could leverage that person. And then, you know, attachment, being attached to the way things ought to be or ought to look. In the Buddhist teaching, I think the second noble principle is that the root of all suffering is attachment, right? I'm just paraphrasing here. So the whole point here is, as human beings, we're quick to be attached to the way things should be, to the way things supposed to be, and it takes away from our ability to really bring a little bit of ambiguity and play into the mix so that we could see other options. And this is something that, as accountants, we are trained in a very rigid manner. We have rules and regulations to follow, and a lot of times this sort of mode of operation have us get attached to the way things ought to look. In this world where technology is evolving so quickly and so rapidly, we have to be watchful about the way we attach to things. Now, attachments are valuable because they keep order, right? So we attach to following the accounting standards or this, that, or the other. Those are valid. What I'm pointing to is the attachment to the way things look such that we don't go out and have conversations for innovation. Okay, so you want to guard against those. Now, let's talk about adoption, a pathway to yes, let's do this, right? So how do we get buy-in? How do we get the board, the company to commit and say, okay, we're going to throw a budget behind this? This is not about having the right slide deck or the right charts or graphs. It's about how you identify the outcomes. And I want you to pay particular attention here. How you identify the outcomes, the values to be unlocked, and how it's communicated. So, when we get into this mode in planning, you want to start with your outcome in mind. I always advise my client to start with the outcome. Don't start by talking about the tech. The tech is not the thing here. And I know that this probably sounds counter to everything we're talking about in the digital realm, but bear with me here. The outcome, you want to start with the outcome, not with the technology. Having an outcome in mind creates a powerful context that will guide your planning and the conversations you have about adopting emerging technology. And context, remember this finger example? It's a powerful context. When you create that, you create where people listen from. Don't start with the technology, like I was saying. Start with your outcome. I have seen many companies start with the technology and wasted time, money, and other resources that, as it lacked proper intentional direction. Now, in preparing to have this conversation with peers or senior management or the board, you want to make sure that your messaging is value focused, not problem focused. So we know the problems that we're trying to solve, and we typically like to lead with that because we know that people could identify with the problems. What I'm saying is be value focused, not problem focused. So instead of we want to solve our late delivery problem, we could say it can possibly be we want to increase customer goodwill by providing them with an extraordinary customer service experience. This is pointing to the unlocking of value for the business. Working from the context of value versus problem creates a fundamentally different mindset and opens up the possibility of solutioning differently. The biggest opportunity here is to shift the context of how something occurs. And, with the finger example that I did, being able to communicate impacts is powerful. We usually take action when we are grounded in the impact when there is a lack of action. We take action based on how the world occurs to us. So, if it is you're not grounded in the impact, then a solution might be slow to come in. So when we talk about being value focused, or talking about the outcomes and being outcome driven, if these outcomes aren't accomplished, what would be the impact of that? So you've already given them the future state, you've given them the value that gets created. Now, here is what would happen if that is not dealt with, right? And in in creating the outcomes, or said another way, a value proposition, you want to have inclusion. Create a cross-functional team, meaning get others involved in the planning and creation stage. Remember that we just spoke about, uh, from my model, play, like bringing in ambiguity, including others, right? Think about kids on a playground. Bringing play and openness to the conversation will have everyone listen to each other and being open to new ideas. You can never tell what will get created when we listen, and converse with an element of play. Now, I also spoke about concerns and attachments. So you want to be able to always be able to pay attention to those concerns and attachments you're bringing to the conversation. And you could talk about them. When you create a cross-functional team, create the space to talk about concerns and attachment, and the way you might be attached to something looking in finance versus the way somebody in production might be attached to it looking, versus the way that someone who is in the production line might be attached to the way it looks. Okay, so it's about coming together so we could actually think about these things differently. Now, which technology? Again, let the outcome drive this exploration. So, like the cold chain logistics I talked about earlier with the farmers and the distributor, and then the transportation of produce. Instead of starting with the technology, they started with what was the problem? What was the value that could get created? What's the outcome we're working towards? The outcome they were working towards was to have less waste along the supply chain. And the other outcome is that they were working towards is to treat people along the participants along the supply chain get fairly treated. So inside of looking at all of those outcomes, they started creating, well, which technology can support that? So when we talk about which technology, it's not just about taking the one that everybody is talking about. It's looking at what's the outcome we're working towards, and working backwards from there. We could now have a technology conversation, a few steps into that conversation, because now you would sort of dive into what can help, what can have you fulfill on that particular outcome. So you have to be outcome driven before determining the technology itself. And I hope that makes sense. Please ask any question that you want, and we could address them, in a couple of minutes. Now, when we look at how things are done, a big part of it is how do we prepare ourselves to have those conversations, right? So a number of things that I want to point out is, resources, create, project plan, outline requirement, build timeline, document assumption. These are typical things that we know to do. We've been doing this throughout our careers. It's the same skill set that's required. And I want you to now take that skill set and apply it to making decisions around blockchain and emerging technology or machine learning, right? So where blockchain is concerned, there is a book that well, actually two books. One is called Blockchain Revolution. And Rashid, what I will do, I would send you an email with the name of the book and the author and maybe a link to Amazon or something. I've read this book twice and loved it. And then there is the second book is called The Truth Machine. So Blockchain Revolution and The Truth Machine. Those two books really open up the world of what blockchain makes available and what other technologies working with blockchain makes available. And just to recap here, create outcomes of value proposition. Again, I can't stress how important this is, because this is where you'd save time, you'd save money, you'd save resources. Determine the possible technology solution after being grounded in the value proposition, the outcomes that you want to create, and explore the combination of emergent technology, not just one piece of tech, because sometimes the solution could come from the combination of technology, and understand and define resourcing requirements. These are some of the things that you want to be able to go to, decision makers within the organization to have backing for engaging with any type of emerging technology. So again, when we talk about blockchain, when we talk about machine learning, they're two valuable pieces of technology. To engage with these, become outcome focused. Like, you know that you want to engage with these pieces of technology, okay, set them aside, and then sort of put on your business lens and say, what are the outcomes we're trying to create? What's the value we're trying to unlock in the business? And then start working your way down to determine the technology that's going to support that. So I really hope that, inside of this conversation, I was able to, talk about some of the practical aspects of the application of these items. If you have any specific questions along blockchain or supply chain and stuff like that, feel free to ask them. And I am now going to hand over to Rashid to see if we have questions that I can address. So I want to say thank you very much for watching. And Rashid, over to you.
Hey, Dave, what a wonderful presentation. Thank you so much. It was lovely listening to you. Very, very great insights. Thank you so much. And we have, yes, a lot of questions coming our way. So I'm trying to, club them together because some are very similar. So we've been asked by Hamza, Ayub, and Hassan Swale. So basically, the question they're asking is, because they hear about all these technologies. This has also been asked by Rizwan Yusuf. So they hear about blockchain, artificial intelligence, and being an accountant and starting out, very early in their careers. So they look at, learning languages such as Python or,
Right.
doing some programming courses. So they're asking, do they really need to go into programming and learning the technology to that extent as an accountant? Or is there a different path for accountants to keep in mind?
So awesome question. And I get this question more often than not across many of the webinars that I do. And here's what I say to that. Two things. One, if it is that you're passionate about technology in that regard, and you're excited about learning a language like Python, for example, or building out smart contracts or whatever technology you might be passionate about, then if that's where passion is, follow it. Second part of that is this. As an accountant, we bring a lot of valuable skills to the table already that a technology person or someone who is a coder or developer will not have for the most part. So what I like to say is, if it is that learning Python or anything else in the technology realm is more of a survival mode thing, because you kind of see that's the way the industry is going, so you kind of jump on that bandwagon, chances are you'd end up learning that and create amazing solutions out of it, maybe, but then it's not what you're passionate about, right? So I would say, one, follow passion. Secondly, leverage each other. What I mean by that is, am I someone who knows how to code? No. Do I know how to write a smart contract and put it onto the blockchain? No. I do know how it works. And what I do, I work with people who are experts in their realm, right? The IT folks, the developers. And then I am the business person, the accountant, the business solutions architect that work in conjunction with the tech persons. So that's the two things I'd say to that. One, if you're passionate about it, by all means, pursue that path, because there'll be a level of joy and fulfillment coming out of learning and doing in that realm. And if that's not the case, then leverage what you bring to the table and work with people who are the experts or subject matter experts in the other areas.
Right, very good answer, Dave. And we're receiving a lot of praise and a lot of thank you. So thank you again. We have another question. So this was an interesting question from Muhammad Ursulan Riaz. He's asking, to what extent do you see blockchain changing the world for accountants in terms of their daily work and the tools that they use?
So I'm going to answer this question. First of all, very, very good question from a very future state. This is not where blockchain is right now. Blockchain and the potential that it have will revolutionize the way we do business and the way accounting works and the way we gather information. Think about this, right? Right now, we have individual companies experimenting with blockchain. Some of them are actually live on blockchain. So, like for example, Walmart China, has placed all of their leafy greens onto blockchain, working with VeChain, one of the companies that I mentioned earlier. And that particular use case, they created that, and now all of the persons along that supply chain are now forced to go onto blockchain because, I mean, it's Walmart, right? They say use blockchain, you use blockchain. Um, so my point here is that when that takes on and becomes a network effect, meaning instead of just leafy greens, Walmart put other products onto the blockchain and they put more products and more products. Suddenly, you have the entire world where information is on blockchain. Think about this in terms of, let's think about money. One of the issues around complex financial transaction is the source of funds. Where did it come from? In a future state of blockchain, think about a dollar getting printed, and you could track that dollar everywhere that it would have gone around the world to where it is right now. That's one of the future state, whether it's a digital currency or whether it's physical money that's then put onto the blockchain, you'll be able to trace that anywhere. So in that future state, it's like, okay, think about when we audit, we send out a bank confirmation. Do we need a bank confirmation? Maybe not. Think about sending a customer confirmation in an audit or supplier confirmation in some cases, right? Think about the vouching or testing of invoices, the substantive transaction, the test of details we do as auditors. Well, what kind of work will we do if it is we test and realize that everything is immutable on blockchain? So the transaction posted in my GL must be, complete and accurate. Then what does that leave us doing? Now, that's the future state. That's where I see this evolving. So what there is for us to do is to engage with the technology from that future state. Like, okay, interact with it as something that's going to revolutionize the way you execute right now. So it is going to have a fundamental impact on the profession. I suggest reading ACCA's I can't remember the name of the report, but July last year, I think was July 20th last year, Professional Insight report that spoke about a lot of those future type positions that will be available. And, keep doing your research. You would see it evolving. Take on one of those roles. Become somebody who is an accountant that also is now specialized in data integrity, for example. And data integrity doesn't mean you have to become a tech expert. You know what determines complete and accurate data. You do know that from the work you do as an accountant. Take that skill set and say, you know what, guys, if you put crap onto the blockchain, if you put bad data onto the blockchain, it becomes immutable garbage, right? So garbage in the blockchain becomes immutable garbage. Okay, what are we going to do to make sure that only good information gets onto the blockchain? That's a big role. That's a humongous role that needs to get addressed. And we are poised to take that position. So there's huge opportunity for us to be a part of this wave of change. And yes, it's going to have a significant impact.
Yep, and we should all be ready for that significant change in the careers. And we have another question from Madiha Latif. Is there any way that we can use blockchain in the domain of budgeting and planning? And what would be the future of budget and planning, individuals who are in this domain, how they can evolve in the tech field? related to AI and machine learning. A similar question is about auditing. There's a question by Bilal. Will blockchain create a world where audit will not even be required at all?
I love that second question because one of the elements of blockchain or the values of that people are seeing or the benefits is that you have a near instantaneous audit. So in that future state, think about it. If the global supply chain, everybody is using blockchain, then what does the auditor do? If it is at the moment the transaction occurs, there's an audit trail, it's audited, it's immutable, you can't change it, there's nothing you could do about it, then it begs to ask the question, what would the auditor be doing? Now, there's a lot of work an auditor does that's not technology related or transaction related, right? All of the work around risk management, understanding where risks are. I think there's still a huge role for auditors to play in the future. Um, it's just going to look fundamentally different. Think back 20 years, 25 years ago when transactions were mostly paper based. And now I do entire audits where I don't see a single piece of paper. The entire financial audit is done digitally. That wasn't something that we would have fathomed as the way audit would have looked now 25 years ago. The same way that we do audits now, it's going to look fundamentally different in the future. So I would say that a lot of what we do is going to go away, especially around the tester control. Sorry, not tester, the tester details, right? The execution part of an audit. A lot of those elements are going to go away. There may be a more of a focus around controls, for example, because you want to make sure the controls are there to ensure that the way transaction get executed on the blockchain leads to complete and accurate data. So we still have a big role to play there. And instead of having just financial auditors, there may be a lot more work to do in and around internal controls. To answer the other question in budgeting, yes. One of the, again, going to the outcome in budgeting is to be able to have proper information about the business in a way to plan, how the business is going to execute its processes in producing goods and services for its customer, also managing cash flows, right? And one of the fundamental issues behind that a lot of time is that you have incomplete data in which to budget with, right? So because of the way blockchain works and the fact that it have the ability to give you real-time information when used with other pieces of technology, for example, there's a huge opportunity here. Think about this. I talked about smart contracts. If you program a smart contract to do the thinking behind how you would do demand planning, for example, and program that smart contract to execute at a specific point in time, then you've just taken out a whole lot of manual work that you might have been doing in developing your budget. So there's a lot more I could say here, but the short answer to that is yes, it can help. It can help in ways that you're going to have to think outside of the box, right? Think about how do you develop your budget? What's the thought process that you put into that? And which pieces of the technology, either by themselves or when combined, would actually replicate that? And that's where the machine learning aspect of things may come in, because the whole essence of machine learning is that it's intuitive and it learns over time, right? That decision-making process.
Sure, Dave, thank you. We have another question, and it's about the cost of this technology. So the question is blockchain just for large MNCs, or small businesses or small practices can also leverage a blockchain and artificial intelligence? So well, if somebody is about to invest, how much would it cost a business to have something implemented?
And very, very relevant question, because people want to know how much you have to spend and what would that return on investment look like, right? So when you start looking at cost of a solution or creating a proof of concept, first of all, I would say when you look at the spend, you want to look at it at two aspects, right? The cost to create a proof of concept and then the cost to implement, right? Usually the cost to create a POC would be a lot lower. A lot of blockchain companies want people to create POCs. So a lot of times they say, oh, you know what, we'll give you discounted transaction rates in order to build out your POCs, or we'll give you some free transactions on the blockchain to help you building out your proof of concept, right? Your POC. So in some cases, it could cost you little or next to nothing to create a POC. If you have an internal tech team and you have programmers and whatnot on your team and coders and whatnot, they can actually go and build out something themselves, creating a POC on any public blockchain, which is the beauty about a public blockchain, is that anyone could go and build a solution on that particular blockchain. Now, the other side of that is when you start looking at the end game, right? Like, what's the outcome? So you could have solutions taken as little as $5,000 to as much as a couple $1 million, depend on what that project is going to look like, what that solution is going to look like. So um, there is a company called DNVGL. They're an assurance company. They created something called My Story. So if you just Google DNVGL My Story, they created that for wine tracking. And it's built on the VeChain blockchain, and it tracks wine from, you know, the grapes being planted and the nutrients and the location that it is, how it basically the entire story of the wine is published on that particular application called My Story. Now, a development at that level would have cost a lot more than someone who wanted to use an off-the-shelf solution. So VeChain, for example, has an off-the-shelf um, solution where in a very short space of time you could be on blockchain. They provide, you know, it's similar to getting an accounting software, right? You don't have to go and build a code and and link all of the data points in your accounting software. You just buy an off-the-shelf package, whether that's, you know, QuickBooks or Peachtree or whatever software you use, Zero. You go and you buy the software and you use it, create a chart of account and you use it. Similarly, you have companies that create off-the-shelf blockchain solutions. Like, for example, VeChain has one called Toolchain, and Toolchain is an off-the-shelf application that it's done in such a way that it's way easier for you to get on to blockchain without having to think about blockchain. So when you get onto your accounting software, you don't think about the coding. You don't think about the algorithms behind what you do, right? You just get the software, you follow the instructions, and you implement your accounting software. It's the same thought process behind the example I'm giving here is VeChain's toolchain. And if you Google VeChain toolchain, you'll see that as an off-the-shelf package. And you know, you could get more information by chatting with them. But you know, by the way, I'm not selling VeChain. It's just one of the best examples I know out here for a blockchain and blockchain related solution, and it has been the go-to solution that I've used in the past.
Sure. Thank you, Dave. We've run out of time, but we'll just take two more questions.
Sure.
And I hope we've answered Mohammed Zishan's question, which was about cost. And now we have a question from Salman Khan. If inaccurate data is entered using blockchain, can it be corrected or will it remain there forever? Is it like a black hole of misinformation? So that is one question. And the other question was from a student who was very passionate about learning blockchain and coding and programming. So he was asking what certification or courses or books would you suggest to a student of accountancy who is also interested in building a career as a programmer or a blockchain expert?
Great question. So I'll answer the question from the student first, and then I might need you to just recap that other question from you, Rashid. But the two books that I recommended, Blockchain Revolution and The Truth Machine, those two books, whilst it's not specifically about programming, what I would say as an accountant, read those two books, because what it would do, it would give you a better understanding of where you can go to create solution. Because in some solutions lean towards different programming language and others, for example, or some regions of the world use different things, right? So I would say go to those two books first and really get grounded in what's being shared in those books around how the technology has been evolving around the world and the kinds of solution that have already been created. So get grounded in that, and then let that guide you and inspire you to say, okay, well, this is the direction I want to take my dual career going forward. And then the second question, Rashid, can you recap that the first one?
Yep, it was by Salman Khan. He was asking if inaccurate data is entered in a blockchain, can you
Right.
correct?
So this is the thing about blockchain. It's not like a typical database where you could create and edit and delete and all of that stuff. It you could only create and read on the blockchain. You can't do anything else, which is what is intimidating about blockchain too. Is that if you put something on there, it's there forever. You can't go and like tweak it and take it out, right? It's impossible to do that with the design of with the way blockchain is designed and meant to work. So that's why it's so important to know and understand data flow, and at what point does data make it onto a blockchain, and who is making sure that that data is accurate and complete, which is why I was saying that there's a huge role for accountants and people with our background, because we understand what it means to deal with complete and accurate information and how important that is. And we should be the one to drive that level of data integrity that makes it onto the blockchain. Now, with that said, where you have like smart contracts that are built onto the blockchain, um, and let's say you needed to update that smart contract, there are ways to do that. But get the smart contract is something that is attached to the blockchain. It's not I don't know how to say this, but it's not the blockchain itself, right? Because the blockchain, you're not going to be able to edit what's on the blockchain, but there might be ways to update and create a new updated version of a smart contract. So there's some technical things around the smart contract side of it, but again, in solutioning, you'd have to really think about all of these items when you go along to interact with those technology.
Right. Thank you, Dave. And a lot of questions for me. People are asking, will they be able to get hold of the recording? Is it like blockchain where you have something and it remains there? Yes, the session was being recorded, and we will email you the link to the recording as well as registration links for our upcoming sessions. Our next session is about project management, and then we have another session on ERP. So stay tuned. Make sure you check your emails regularly. We will send you the links. And a lot of people were asking if I can share the link of Dave's article that he referred. Yes, I'll try to get that link from Dave, and we'll email that to everybody who was listening to us today. And a lot of people were asking to repeat the name of the books. I have noted down the names, and I will also get
And
some links from
I'll
Dave.
send it. I'll send it to you as well so that you have that. And then, for everybody on the call, feel free to add me on LinkedIn too if you have any other questions.
Sure, and I think you should do that. Add Dave on your LinkedIn network. So whenever you have any questions, you need a little advice, he's your go-to person. You can go and ask Dave, and he'll be there to help you. So thank you very much for joining us for the session one of 2 Week Too Strong. I am, 100% sure you enjoyed the session, found it very, very valuable, and I hope to see all of you again in our next session. And thank you so much, Dave. And I wish you a great, it's already bright and,
I know the sun. So you see, now everyone on the call could say that they've seen a sunrise in Miami because that's where I am.
yeah, it's bright and beautiful in Miami. So hope you have a great Saturday over there. And people in Pakistan, enjoy your Saturday evening. Have some good time with your family. Enjoy your Sunday, and keep an eye on your emails for more details about this program. Okay, so signing off. Take care. Bye bye.
Bye bye, guys.